Hello everyone, so welcome back. So in this video, let's discuss about the integration runtime. Okay, so to understand the integration runtime, okay, so let's go to the uh, integration runtime. Yeah, so let's understand. So what is integration runtime? So I'll just show you. So where is this integration runtime? Okay, if we just go to the manage section. Okay, so here we have link services, and below that we have something called integration runtime. Okay, so this is what the integration runtime is. And if you remember, so while creating a link services, we had this integration runtime, and we have chosen this auto resolve integration runtime, right? So this is basically a default one which is created by the Azure. Okay, so integration runtime basically is a compute infrastructure, okay, so which is used by the Azure Data Factory and Azure Synapse also, okay, so pipeline Azure Synapse pipelines to provide the data integration capabilities across the different network environments. Okay, so you can see it is fully managed and serverless compute infrastructure. Okay, so fully managed in the sense like you don't have to worry about the infrastructure provision, software installation, patching, or a capacity scaling. Okay, and we have to only concentrate on, like, we have to pay only for the duration of actual use. Okay, so this is that is a pay as you go model, right? And it bridges between the activity and the linked service, right? So if you remember the analogy which we created, the integration runtime is basically a manager, right? So which handles the entire pipeline there, right? So where it manages the activities, linked services. If you are just copying the data from source to destinations, all the activities will be managed by this integration runtimes, right? So so basically it defines the action, and it links services define the location, right? So always remember that analogy, so it will be always easy to understand it. Okay, so as I told you, so it provides the data integration capabilities, right? So what are the different capabilities? First is data flow. Okay, so so integration runtime execute a data flow in a managed Azure compute environment, right? So all these data flows. Okay, so if you just check here, so under the author section, okay, so we have here the data flow, so everything is managed by the integration runtime. Okay, so next we have data movement. Okay, so where it copies the data across the data stores in public or private networks, right? And the service provider supports for built-in connectors, okay, format conversions, column mapping, and finally even we can just scale, even we have a scalable data transfer as well, right? So that's what, so this is the data movement. Okay, so it's everything is handled by the integration runtime. Okay, so like format conversion, column mapping, serialization. Even it provides a native compute to move data between the data stores in the secure, reliable, and high performance manner, right? Even like we have activity dispatch. So dispatch and the monitor transformation activities running on the variety of the compute services such as like Azure Databricks, Azure HD Insights, okay, ML Studio, okay, Azure SQL Database, SQL Server, right? So everything is managed by the Azure integration runtime. And even we have SSIS package execution. Okay, so even you can just in the activities you can just search for SSIS package. Okay, so you can see like we have a SSS package. Okay, so it's natively execute SQL Server integration service packages in the managed Azure compute environment. Okay, so when we talk about the three types, okay, so this is what the integration runtimes take care of. Okay, so integration runtimes are of three types, right? So we have a Azure integration runtime. Okay, so we have a self-hosted integration runtime, and we have a SSIS integration runtime. Okay, so let's try to understand this one by one. Okay, so we have a Azure integration runtime which is created by default, right? So if I just go here under the manage section, and you can see, so this is the default one, which is Azure integration runtime, which is created. So what does it manage? Okay, so Azure integration runtime can run data flows in Azure. Okay, and run copy activities between the cloud data stores. Okay, so even it dispatches the following data activities in the public network. Okay, like Databricks notebook, jar, Python activities. Okay, so even the stored procedure activity. Okay, data analytics, then SQL SQL activities, Spark activities. So all these activities is managed by this integration runtime. Okay, so that's what. So whenever you're creating a linked service, this is the by default which is being created here. Okay, so this is what the integration runtime. You can see it works on the public networks and responsible for the data flows, data movements, and the activity dispatches. Okay, so this is what the Azure integration runtime. Okay, so next we have a self-hosted integration runtime. Okay, so if I just go to the self integration, if I want to see, okay, so you can see like we have an option to create new. So if I just create new, you can see like we have a two options here. Okay, so you can see we have integration runtime is a native compute used to execute or dispatch activity. So either we can just create Azure self-hosted or Azure SSIS. So if I just talk about Azure self-hosted, okay, so Azure self-hosted is capable of running a copy activity between a cloud data stores and a data store in a private network. Okay, so remember these are some differences we'll see in upcoming slide. Okay, so and even it perform the dispatching, even it helps in the dispatching the transform activities against the compute resources in on-premises or Azure virtual network. Okay, so if I just go for the self-hosted, right, so if I just click on continue, okay, so you can see we need to give the description and the type of self-hosted and just directly create it. Okay, so this is basically a self-hosted runtime, so which works on the public and the private networks. Okay, and what all it provides, it provides data movement and activity dispatch capabilities, and it need to install on-premises machine or a virtual machine inside the private network. Okay, so and finally we have a SSIS integration runtime. Okay, so it can be provisioned in either public network or private network. On-premises data access is supported by joining this Azure SSIS to the virtual network that is connected to your on-premises network. Okay, so it supports the SS package execution and works on the public and as well as the private network. Okay, so here you can see the details here. Okay, so integration runtimes. So we have the Azure self-hosted and Azure SSIS. And in the public network, so we can manage this Azure integration runtime with the data flow, data movement, and the activity dispatches. And in self-hosted, we can manage the data movement and the activity dispatches. In Azure SSIS, we have SSIS package execution, both in public and private. But when we talk about Azure, it's you don't have in the private network, right? So need to remember. So that's what. So whenever you're choosing the integration runtime, so based on your network, you can just choose this. Okay, so we have a self-hosted. Okay, so where we have a data movement and activity dispatch, and here we have a data movement activity dispatch both in the public and the private network. So this explains nicely. Okay, so if this is the entire data factory, okay, so you can see like we have a cloud and on premises. Okay, so if I am so in the virtual Azure virtual network, okay, so I can choose this integration runtime. This is self-hosted, right? So where it helps in the data movement, compute data activities. Okay, so all these activities which is performed by this. Okay, so even in this you can see like based on the on premises and the cloud, and again based on the virtual network and the private network, this is both has been categorized. Okay, so if you understood this table, it's same table is explaining here. Okay, so if you have like self-hosted, okay, so even it has the on premises. Okay, so you can see like how it's we can just connect with the source and destination and the different connectors which we need to connect it. Okay, so from the cloud and on premises, that's what it helps in on cloud and premises. When we talk about self-hosted, it is in the virtual network, even in the it helps to transfer from the cloud and the on premises. So when we talk about only Azure, okay, so it's in the public network, right? So it's not in the Azure virtual network, right? So even in the SSIS, okay, it's in the public network, but it's everything in a cloud. Okay, so this is how it's basically defined. Okay, so okay, so while defining self-hosted, this is what you'll be getting. Okay, for example, if I just click on create here, okay, so it will be created. Okay, so this is so here this is what you need to will be getting a keys. Okay, so don't worry, I'll be deleting this. Okay, so this is these things you should not actually display it. Okay, so this is about the integration runtime setup for the self-hosted. Okay, so this is what I've just added in the slides. Okay, fine. So default integration runtime, it's auto resolve integration runtime. Okay, so even it helps in the caching the data. Okay, so if you are based on the location wherever you have chosen, okay, so all the data will be cached. Okay, so that we will have a low latency as well. Okay, so you can see we can create a Azure IR. So when you want to explicitly define the location of IR and virtually group the activities execution on the different IR for the management purpose. Okay, so this is all about the integration runtime. Okay, so let's try to delete this. Okay, so another option we know, so it's Azure SSIS, right? So you can just click on Azure SSIS and fill all the details, and it will be created and see all the cost here, right? So this is all about the integration runtime. And remember, so when we are creating linked services, you can see here we have just by default it's created auto resolve integration runtime, right? So even you can just select here new integration runtime. Fine. So this is all about the integration runtime. So I hope you understood. So let's continue our discussion in the next video.